Hi, Erica. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I am delighted that you're here. You're one of my favorite people inside this community, and I'm just really grateful that you're willing to kind of share your story and what the evolution of your business. So, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to just dive right in.
Yeah, of course. So I have been, quote, doing marketing for almost 20 years. It was my very first big kid job out of college. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. I ended up working for a couple of different agencies. And over the years, I realized that there are things about every agency that everyone thinks that like, oh, I could do this better, and things that you learn that you're like, wow, I really want to do more of this, or I want to do less of that. I worked for one agency that had no standard operating procedures, no SOPs, no processes. So every new project was like reinventing the wheel every single time. And it felt like we were constantly flying by the seat of our pants. And I love chaos and I love firefighting, but it's really unsustainable to live in a constant state of that. I worked for another agency that was on the exact opposite side of the coin, where there were so many processes and so many different steps, where if a client had like a teeny request for a small website change, it took a whole week for us to get that through the process of like, who does this need to go to and who needs to approve it? And like, was a whole thing.
So, both inefficient in two completely different
in
ways.
two completely different
Yeah.
ways. I did not understand at the time how inefficient both of those ways were. I just knew it felt wrong. It felt wrong. It felt like there's got to be some other way to do this. Luckily, I've always worked for small businesses. I never worked for one of the big heavy hitter fancy agencies. So these were all small businesses helping other small businesses. The other thing that I came up against at agencies was there's an awful lot of overhead and there's an awful lot of just extra fluff that as an agency starts to grow, it means that you're building up a reputation. One of the agencies I worked for was very well regarded I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's a great like shop local, buy local type of city, type of community. And we had these small businesses that wanted to come work with us, and we had to turn them away because they didn't meet the agency minimum. And I get that. I totally get that with an agency that's got an office and a lot of overhead and a lot of project management costs. And I was a project manager and I get that. But it also broke my heart to see these small businesses coming in the door and having to pay like a 25% project and account management fee on top of all of the other stuff that we were doing for them. Like, they can't afford that. They're barely scraping this together to be able to come to us in the first place. And so, during the pandemic, and there were lots of layoffs, and I ended up launching my business. That's a whole separate story.
Well, tell us that
But
story. Why did you launch your business?
I knew that I didn't want to have all of that extra crap
Mm.
in my business. So that piece of it, I've been laid off 4 times. I have been through 4 rounds of layoffs. And I've only been in my professional career for 20 years. So I took a 3-year hiatus as a teacher. So that's why I say almost 20 years. But I've been laid off 4 times due to like acquisitions, or we're closing down this entire branch, or marketing budget cuts. Marketing is seen as overhead instead of revenue. And so we're the first people to get cut, right? So it's so interesting. The pandemic hit. I had this idea. I knew I wanted to start my own agency. The last one, I jumped and I ended up at my dream agency, right? And I thought, okay, I'm going to stay here as long as I can and learn as much as I can from these people. And they were fabulous. And then the pandemic hit. I knew I wanted to launch my agency. I knew I wanted to go off and do my own thing and be able to help these small business owners that we as the big agency couldn't help. And the pandemic hit and I got scared. I thought, okay, I can't leave now. I've got a steady paycheck. I've got steady insurance and benefits. I just need to like stay the course and keep going. The year before the pandemic, June of anyway, I had already,
Yeah.
yes, I had already filed my paperwork with the state. Like, I had started my LLC. I had secured all of my social media handles and my URL. Like, I was ready to go. And then the world changed and I was like, okay, I need the security of a steady paycheck. And then I got laid off from that steady paycheck.
When?
February 2020. Wait, 2021? No, February 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had made it
COVID.
almost a year. Yeah. And
what did you think?
Initially, I thought, okay, time to brush off my resume and get back out there. So I got laid off February 1st, 2021. It was a Monday. And I allowed myself to mope and sulk a little bit that one day. And then I brushed off my resume and was like, all right, I need to get onto Indeed. I need to get on LinkedIn. And in the back of my mind, there was just that like, could you do this? And we were already starting to hear the phrase, the Great Resignation. And I knew a few people who were thinking about going off on their own and freelancing. I had talked to a few local business owners who were like, oh, I need to change the entire format of my business. I need to change my website so that I can do online ordering and to go. So like, I can help these people. And so I got laid off on a Monday. I did all of the work that I needed. I built I built my social media profiles. I built my whole website. I built a brand for myself in like 3.5 days and launched my business that Friday.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, Pia, I'm just realizing that was my first intensive.
You were your first intensive. And
I
it
was
worked beautifully.
It did. It was great. It was great to go from like moping on Monday to I'm a business owner on Friday. It was crazy. Like it was just this crazy whirlwind. I told you I like a little bit of chaos,
Yeah.
and that's what it was. And it was great. And I was like really excited. And then the like hard work, the weird work started of trying to find clients and get business. And man, I had a $325 logo that I did, and it took forever. I think I probably made like $5 an hour for that logo by the time I was done. That's probably an exaggeration, but that's how I was cobbling it together that first year. And I had pulled a lot of the habits that I had learned in agencies. I set myself up on a project management system, and I started putting things through all of these like systems and processes, which weren't built for me, not built for like one person handling things. It was built for an entire team of people. And I was doing these like
you knew it really well, right? You knew the project management well because you had been in charge of
Yep.
it.
Mm-hmm. I knew it really well. And so that's what I just defaulted back to.
Yeah.
And things were taking forever. Clients were not happy. I mean, they were happy with the outcome, but I didn't know how to present work in a way. Like I didn't know how to present myself confidently.
What was the outcome of that? Like what were you experiencing with them?
Oh, a ton of back and forth, emails back and forth. I had one project where I had gone back and forth with this client a few times. And he, at one point in the meeting, he stopped me and drew a picture on a Post-it note of like what he was thinking it should look like and held it up to the monitor. So that's where I was, I had turned into an order taker. Like you tell me what you want and I will make it for you. Okay. And I had come from a strategist role at one of my agencies. I was a VP and leading full marketing strategies. And now I was taking orders from a Post-it note during a Zoom.
And how'd you feel about that? Like at what point did you realize like what's happening? Is this the right thing?
What is wrong? Yeah. It was the late night infomercial moment. Like there's got to be a better way. Yes, it was that. I just didn't know what that better way was. I had tried to take a look at, okay, what worked well at this agency versus that agency versus over here, like what had worked well versus what didn't. And I was trying to figure out where to cut the fat.
What were the biggest pain points for you at that point? Like just the back and forth was what, draining? It was taking too long? Like what was happening?
So the back and forth with clients, I was managing multiple clients simultaneously, multiple client projects, like juggling and follow-up of lots of different things going on is definitely not my strong suit. It was easier when I was a project manager because I wasn't actually executing the things. I was just the air traffic controller. Here I was trying to be the air traffic controller and the pilot and the flight attendant, like all at the same time.
So was it overwhelming? Did you drop the ball? Like what was the outcome of that?
Yes, I was dropping the ball on client projects. I was overwhelmed. I was working all the time, which I mean, during the pandemic wasn't that big of a deal because we were all just at home all the time anyway. What else was I going to be doing? Binge watching Netflix. But so it was okay. I had convinced myself that it was okay because I was committed to making the business work. And I grew up in a culture, family, where if you just work hard enough, you can make anything work. You can make anything happen. And so I thought like, okay, if this business fails, it's because I didn't work hard enough. And so I was just working all the time.
Wow.
With as many projects and as many clients as I could.
Okay. So basically, Erika finally decided to jump did it, got the clients, but just working all the time and and even not feeling that terrible about it because that feels like a good thing to you deep down somewhere. I'm doing the right thing.
I'm doing the right thing.
Okay. So what made you want to change it? Or did you? I mean, you joined our community, I don't remember when now, 2.5 years ago, almost?
Yeah.
What was the impetus for that? Did I follow you around with an ad or did you find me?
I saw one of your ads and then stalked you online for a little while. I downloaded, you had a very basic version of the Freedom Calculator, which I downloaded, filled out, and was like, oh, this is really interesting. I can figure out exactly how much I need to be charged. Like, that was huge for me.
That's the Price to Freedom Calculator. We still have that up. I'll put the link in the show notes to that. That's fun. Okay, keep going. But it's redesigned. Marisa made it like way prettier.
Oh my gosh, it was so good. And it's a really good lead magnet, Pia. It was more than just like dipping my toe into this world. It was shining a light on what I was missing. I didn't know that there was a different way. I just knew that the way that I was doing it wasn't really sustainable, but I was still committed to making it work. And so when I started to see more of the no BS stuff online, it was intriguing. It gave me hope. That sounds so cheesy. But it gave me hope. And then I came to, you did a webinar and
you were on that group call.
I was on
those in years.
It was on a group call. And I mean, like 10 minutes in to this 45-minute call, I was sold. I was like, this is what I need to do. It felt like you were speaking directly to all of the frustrations that I was experiencing. Like managing and juggling multiple clients, multiple projects, multiple deadlines, overworking, not being able to manage the client expectations, client back and forth, allowing myself to be pushed around by clients. That's a horrible way to put it. I don't want to put it that way.
Well, pushed around. I mean, here, draw this. Here's the Post-it. It's just what you call it, but it's like, oh, you're leading this project now, not me.
Right. Like when I take my car to the mechanic and I'm like, it's making this noise. And I think it's like maybe one of these three things. And the mechanic looks at me and says, no, it's this. I'm the expert. This is what we need to fix. I don't question that mechanic.
You want your mechanic to do that. You don't want your mechanic to go, what else do you
What do you think? What?
Where should I look?
I don't want my doctor to be like, what should I cut into today? No, not that what I'm doing is brain surgery, but I also was lacking the confidence to have those conversations with clients. I was lacking the creative confidence and the strategy. I was new to business. I was new to owning a business. I was new to running a business and doing all of those things. And in that newness, I had forgotten that I was not new to creative, that I was not new to strategy. And I let that overwhelm me in a way that I needed backup. Again, this is coming from the pandemic and coming from agency where I had always worked with creative people and we could always ping ideas off of each other. And now all of a sudden I'm sitting in this little room all day, every day. It was just creating in a vacuum, creating client work, but also creating the foundations of my business. I was creating in a vacuum. And so I needed people who were going through the same thing that I was going through at the same time. How are we supposed to calculate our taxes? In addition to what's the best way to present to clients? All of those pieces needed to come together for me. Yeah. And they did.
Okay.
And they did.
So 10 minutes in, okay, I got to do that session again. I'll do that session again soon. Okay. So you joined us. And as I recall, you really jumped in. I mean, you went full force and you just started taking action left and right. Should we fast forward a little bit? What's changed in how you run your business since you joined us? What's changed in your sales process and your management process?
My sales process has completely changed. I have a really good idea of the types of people that I want to work with and the types of people that I don't. I don't take every client, which is it's vastly different from where I was when I first started. I do not work with every client. Every single person starts off with a 20-minute call. You call it the fit call. I tell my clients, I call it the fit call because I want to make sure that we are a fit to work together. It's not just them interviewing me, it's me interviewing them. I only want to work with people that I know are going to be a good fit for my process. And my process is unique. It's not unique in the no BS world, but it's unique in the in the
St.
world
Petersburg.
of people that I talk to, not
Yeah.
just St. Pete, like all of the small business owners that I talk to, in particular ones that have worked with agencies before, they just cannot fathom, first of all, how are you making any money if you're only working with one client at a time? And how are you able to get through these projects so quickly? Because for my clients, it takes 1 week, 2 week, or 4 weeks, depending on what size project.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, that's really like a 1 to 2 to maybe 4 or 5 day commitment. Those weeks are my work.
Right.
So that has drastically changed. I have gotten so much more efficient. The working with one client at a time, I feel so much more creative and focused because I'm not bouncing from project to project. I am 100% focused on this one client and solving their big picture. And it's magical. It like that focused creative time is so valuable. They are getting so much more of me. They are getting so much more value out of it rather than me bouncing back and forth and answering a zillion emails and, oh, can you do this little thing? And, oh, just hop into my website and do that. Like the focused work and the creativity that comes from that has been a game changer for me. I have leveled up creatively so much in the last 3 years.
Amazing. That is incredible. And based on how you were doing it before with the back and forth, there's also just like a ton of time that has been just completely cut out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. Can you share with me, just like your clients are like, how can you do that? What kind of mindset shifts do you think you needed to make in order to go from original to this new model? Like, did you have to think anything differently or believe something different or get over a belief that maybe you held on to?
I had to believe that I could pull it off. Most of the agency projects that I had worked on, the minimum was a 2, maybe 3 month project. That's bare minimum. Mm-hmm. There were quite a few of them that were 6 to 8 months. And that's for like brand and website, not even ongoing marketing. Like you sign up with us, 6 months later, we will launch your website, which, gosh, now looking back, that's crazy sauce. So I had to believe that it was possible. I've got this story. There was this agency project. We had signed on to do a website for this doctor's office, and their previous agency found out that they had gone to someone else to do the website. And they were like, oh, you've got another agency now. And they just deleted the whole site off of the server. And we were like 3 weeks into the project at that point, 3 weeks of a 3-month project. And all of a sudden, this client had no website. So my small team, there were 6 of us, we rallied the troops and we used a site builder and we built them a site in 2 days. We used the Wayback Machine to get a whole bunch, because they had a ton of like old blogs and old content, but the site was just gone.
Right.
It was just gone.
Wow.
Seeing how quickly we were able to pull that together, that to me was proof of concept that what you were saying before I had bought into the program could work. We dropped every other client project that week. We worked just on this, and we got now a team of 6 people got an entire website built in 1 week, in like 2 or 3 days. Like that was unheard of, but I at least had proof of concept. Now I've got this light bulb moment that, oh, I did it for myself too. My very first, my brand when I launched my business. So I knew I could do it.
But
I knew I could do it.
It's possible, because I think that a lot of people, when they hear this, they're like, yeah, but the quality is going to suffer. Yeah, but you're going to steamroll your clients through it. Yeah, but like, what kind of things do you feel differently about now?
I knew I could do it. I just didn't know how. I did not know how I was going to be able to constrain myself to that amount of time. That's where all of the binge watching that I should have been doing during COVID, I spent, binge watching your videos instead of Netflix. And so that was the how. I knew that it could work. I just didn't know how to make it work. And so I needed guidelines. I needed a framework. And once I implemented that, everything just fell into place. All of the questions that I had of like, creatively, am I going to be able to pull this off? Yes, absolutely I could, because I was following the path that had been laid out for me. I'm not really a path and rule follower. I like to do things my own way. I don't want you to tell me how to live my life. I like to do things my own way. And so looking back, I wish I had been journaling at the time. Looking back, I must have been so desperate to find a better way to work that I was just like, all right, I'm going to try it this way. and see if I can make it work. Because I'm definitely typically not the type of person that's like, oh, I'm just going to follow all these steps. But I followed the steps and they worked.
And it worked. Tell me
and
about
they worked.
an early intensive client that you did, because I remember you doing them pretty quickly or pretty soon after you joined us. Like, what was their experience like, or what kind of feedback did you get?
Funny story. My very first intensive is actually a website that I'm launching this afternoon. She came back with her second business and is now a client again. Yes. She had never worked with an agency, so she had no experience. And therefore, she just trusted me to work the way that I worked. And it was great. She didn't know any better.
Maybe
and that is,
you just had a great process and led her through it.
I did. I had a great process and led her through it. I was still unsure about the process at that point, but I was following the steps.
Yeah.
The second intensive that I did, I tried to insert some of my own, like, oh, let me present it this way. It did not work. I presented her with two options because I wasn't 100% convinced that I didn't have to do like multiple.
Right. Because we teach one option, go hard, present it like this. And
yes,
you're not alone. A lot of people are like, no, my clients need more.
Yep. She needed to see a different option. I felt like she needed to see more than one creative style, and it totally muddied the waters and ended up almost derailing the project. Thankfully, I was able to get it back, and that was still just a 1 week intensive. And then I did 3 1-week intensives back to back, and then jumped straight into a giant project that was exactly what we would have done at my previous agencies, what would have been probably a 4-month process. And I did it in 4 weeks. And
by yourself?
Mostly by myself. Mostly by myself.
6-person agency.
Yes. Well, I had hired a freelance designer to come in and do the initial concept, but she was a designer that I'd worked with before at a previous agency. And we had a conversation. I was like, hey, I'm working a different way now, and I want you to be part of the initial conversations. And I'm going to need this creative concept. I'm going to need it in 3 days. Can you do that? And then we're going to get feedback, and I'm going to make feedback. Like, I'm going to make changes that day. And then once we make the changes and get sign off from the client, then you're off the hook, and I just pay you and you're done. And of course she signed on. She didn't have to deal with the client. She was done in a couple of days worth of work. And for her, instead of all of that back and forth, she was like, how did you do that? It was magic. It was magic.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. So you became a believer pretty quickly. You've been doing it ever since. There's a different kind of, I think, mindset evolution that I have watched you and a lot of the people who have been in this for, close to a year or over a year. It has to do with like how you feel about the money part of the business. Because I know we have a lot of creatives. Maybe they're like, oh, the money part, like I want more money, but like I don't really want to think about it. I definitely don't pay attention to I don't look at the numbers a lot. I just hope I make enough money, try to spend more, all those things. I am curious, when you think about how you felt about the cash coming in, how did you feel about the money as it related to your business before you started working with us compared to now?
Oh, well, there are a couple of big shifts that have happened that had to happen. The first big shift for me was just knowing the numbers, knowing how much I needed to make. Only thing I had to compare it to was my agency salary. And so that was my goal. I just want to make what I made at my previous job without any rationale behind it. And so once I looked at the numbers and knew this is how much I need to make for the year, and based on the pricing, putting my pricing on my website was a huge mindset shift. And that was a game changer for me. Because then when I talked to clients, I knew they're either going to be small, medium, or large. And this is how many of those I need to sell in order to put food on my table and keep the lights on. And that's bare minimum. And once I looked at that, it didn't seem as scary anymore. I mean, of course, if I were still doing $325 logo projects that go on forever, it would have been scary. But looking at the prices on my website, the sizes of my packages, and knowing how long it took me to complete each of these, it didn't seem as scary anymore. So that was a huge mindset shift for me.
It sounds like you just knew the numbers. Before, it was just kind of I have to just trying to make. How did you think about it before?
I was just I kind of spend this amount per month. And so I need to bring that much in per month. And so the first was knowing my numbers, knowing how much I needed to make. The second was zooming back and looking at it not as a month to month number, but as a quarterly number and really as an annual number. So I was very fortunate in that those first few projects that I took back to back, they gave me enough buffer to then feel okay about having a couple of slow months. One of the things I've had to come to terms with is the up and down nature, the volatility of work. And volatility is the wrong word because it doesn't feel volatile anymore. I just know it's like riding the wave. And sometimes you're going to have big months and sometimes you're going to have small months. And I have the buffer and like the peace of mind to not be stressed about that.
What do the low months look like? What are you doing during those low months, like last year?
So last year I took 2 whole months off.
On purpose?
I want to say on purpose. I want to say almost 3, but I took 2 solid months off. I got married. So the month leading up to my wedding, I was working on like a little project and finishing up a few things and fiddling. And then I took the entire month off after my wedding and then some. I didn't really take that off. I just didn't have any work. But yeah, I mean, it was over 2 months where I didn't work, but I had already planned for it. I sat down and did annual planning in December. I knew that I was going to take this time off at the end of March and into April. So I had already planned for that. So I busted my ass in January and February, took on a couple of really nice big projects that I knew could carry me into the summer. And thinking about money in terms of annual planning and quarterly planning has made a huge difference for my peace of mind. And I just don't feel married to the ups and downs anymore.
That is a huge change.
Yeah. So when you first launch your own business, you realize that that steady paycheck isn't coming in anymore. You're so used to that like salaried, it's going to come every 2 weeks. And that was a big culture shock for me. Now I'm okay with the ups and downs. So the other mindset shift that's been huge for me, so the third, is that I realized that I know how to make money. When I worked for somebody else, I never really had the opportunity to make more than what was on my salary. I mean, we got bonuses at the end of the year, maybe. Some companies have profit sharing, but really you're on that salary, right? And so now if I need to save up for a kitten that decided to eat a hair tie and has to have emergency surgery, like those unexpected expenses, I know how to drum up more money if I need to. And that feels really good. That's been such a huge shift, knowing that I'm the rainmaker. I'm not making rain for somebody else.
So really feeling like you are in control of how much you can make because you know what to do if you want to make more.
Absolutely. I mean, gosh, I'm in my 4th year of business and I'm 3 months into my 4th year of business. And so it feels surreal, but I think like I know which levers to move, which toggles to pull if I need to get more business versus when I need to take the foot off the gas a little bit. And so I'm in that season where I've worked really hard this first part of the year. I've had a crazy good Q1 and part of Q2. And now I'm going into the summer and I've got one more client project that I'm hopefully about to sign. And I'm probably going to take a month off. And I can do that because I've planned out my year. I know where my finances are going to be for the year. I've got enough buffer. And I know that if something were to happen and that buffer went away, I know how to go in and what levers to pull to start bringing in more client work. It's such an empowering, freeing feeling. Way more freeing than what I thought at the beginning of the pandemic. We're like, I can't quit this job. I can't lose this salary and these benefits. That felt like freedom. I had no idea.
Because you really were at their mercy.
Me and my, at the time, I thought was super impressive, but my like 4 piddly little weeks of PTO, like that's my freedom. That's for me, that my husband and I, we don't have kids. We love travel. And for us, that's our extravagance is we love to just pack up and go. My honeymoon was the first time the two of us have ever been on a vacation before and not brought our laptops. Neither one of us brought our laptops for 15 days. And it felt really good. He had taken that PTO. He took that time off from his job. And so everybody he works with knows that don't bother him. But for me, it was a little stressful going into it. Like, am I going to be able to do this? As soon as we packed our bags and got on that plane, it was okay. But that's what it was all for. Like all of the hard work, all of the planning, the money mindset shifts, that's what it's for.
I love that so much because I think that, and I think you've seen this too. We've had people recently or in the last couple of months, I remember somebody saying, I have more time now. My prices are raised. My stuff is more profitable. I actually have a lot of space and I'm very uncomfortable with it because it's not just make more money in less time. It's make more money in less time and then deal with the consequences that you have to actually accept. Like, I'm not going to be working all the time because this isn't a job and there's no boss above me to say, you have security because you know how to make money and you know how to run your business. So you're allowed to take as much time off as you want and feel comfortable with, as opposed to PTO, which is like, no, my boss is telling me that my job will be here when I get back. So, right. You have to give that to yourself. And that's why I think it requires such a big mindset shift.
Absolutely.
I love that so much. And I've loved watching that shift in so many of you over the last couple of years. Tell me also, because you did something really interesting, I want to say recently, but I guess it's not that recent anymore. You do branding and websites for a lot of your clients, but your offerings have actually evolved a bit to include AI for marketing, right? Can you tell me a little bit about how that happened and what kind of stuff you do for clients?
Yes. So going back to my previous agencies and me being heartbroken that we weren't able to serve these small businesses. So one of the cornerstones that I founded my business on was that I wanted small business owners, solopreneurs, to be able to have access to the same types of tactics that larger businesses were using. And so 2020, it was starting to get there. AI has changed the game. And so a lot of the automations, the outlining, the content creation machine that bigger companies are able to put a ton of budget into hiring big fancy agencies and having a ton of resources to put into things like that. Small businesses now with AI have the ability to compete on a much smaller scale, right? Because we have to be reasonable about it. We are not Nike.
Right.
But on a much smaller scale, we do now have access to a lot of the same tactics and a lot of the same resources that these big companies have had. And I have absolutely loved watching my clients come alive creating with AI. So one of the things that I've been offering for the last 8 or 9 months now is it's a content creation machine. So I work with them to create the first, for example, 3 months of content, and we establish their content pillars. We attach those to business goals. So are they looking to grow? Are they looking to educate? And then we use AI to really blow that out for them. They're not marketers. They don't know best practices, and I can't stick around and do it for them forever. Another one of the cornerstones of my brand, my business, my agency is that I want my clients to feel empowered. And AI, me training them how to use it, them learning it, lighting up, it's such an empowering feeling for my clients. I've built, now that we've got custom GPTs at our disposal, I have built a couple of bots for my clients using their brand voice that we established together, using their unique value proposition, using their own writing style, where we put their own either transcripts of them speaking or their own. I've got one client who's a fabulous writer, and we have put in a ton of content for her to establish a writing style. We've got a brand keyword, like buzzword list. What are words that this person uses that not everybody else uses that can make it sound more authentic to them? And watching my clients learn how to put in prompts into their own custom created bot and get out stuff that actually sounds like them and their brand, specifically tailored to the types of people that they are trying to reach. Like, it makes me feel like a kid on Christmas. It's actually, no, it makes me feel like the parent watching their kids open presents on Christmas.
Well, what I just love about how you have added that in and been able to add that in is that this is a very quickly changing landscape, and you have been also doing a lot of this for yourself as you build your authority machines. So I would imagine that's part of how you've been learning. You've been kind of doing it for yourself.
Yes.
and then
Absolutely.
immediately turning around. And I did the same thing. So like recognizes like I just did lots of things for my own business, which helped my business and also just empowered me and gave me a lot more authority in that space to then turn around and say, oh, I can help you with this too. And in your particular business and in this particular model, you're able to be agile like that and basically add it into your packages when needed without much change at all.
Yes. So another shift in my business, if I want to change something, I do it. I just change it and I don't have to get permission from anybody. The agencies that I worked at before, if we wanted to change something, it was like trying to move the Titanic.
And raising your prices too. You just do it on the fly. Sometimes while we're all on a coaching call, you do it.
Yes. Yes. I promise I'm paying attention. No, I'm actually just logging into my website and changing my prices. It feels good. It feels really good.
That's amazing.
It's my business and I can run it however the F I want.
Yes. Say it louder for the people in the back. That is exactly what we want everyone listening to hear. I think that for some reason, even though that's obvious when you say it, I feel like sometimes business owners don't feel like that. Like even I've heard people say, oh, I don't want to change my price because somebody already saw it and maybe they'll think I lowered it and that's a problem, or I raised it and that's a problem. It's like, it's your business. It's your decision. You don't owe anybody anything.
Nope. I've changed my prices on my website so many times. My very bottom package started off at either 16 or 1800. Now I think it's 4700. I have never once had anybody say, oh, I saw the price on your website and now it looks higher. Will you honor? Never had anybody say that. No. Change your prices when you want to change them.
I told you once this guy hired me because he goes, every time I go to your website, the prices are higher. I need to hire you now before it gets so out of control. And I was like,
I love that.
I was like, you better hire me now because next month it'll be higher. And he was like, I know. He was like, let's do it. I said, okay, good. He was like, literally every month it's $1,000 more. I was like, yeah, because that's generally what I do. So yeah, if anything, it can be a positive thing. Erika, I feel like we can have you back to have a whole other conversation about AI, which we'll do. But at this point, I just appreciate you so much for coming on, sharing your story. I'm so proud of everything you've done. It's amazing both that you have just like rocket shipped to a completely other place and also like just the beginning for you. I know this more than you do, but I think, but I'm just so excited to see where you go with all of this in the future. How can everybody find you?
I am online at milenddigital.com, MILEENDDIGITAL. 2 E's, 2 D's. I didn't think about it before I snagged all of that stuff.
2 D's, that's smart.
Mile and digital. And that's my URL. It's my Instagram. It's everywhere.
Amazing. Amazing. And yeah, you should definitely follow Erika because she's also a really good example of making amazing content in your authority machine because your content is on fire on Instagram. I love it so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you so much. And again, congratulations on all the amazing work you've done thus far.
Thank you so much, Pia.